Welcome back, and we're moving into our final segment for today as we start to find out more about the Central Information Technology Office and the National ICT Policy and Strategy for Belize. We're joined at this time by Training and Policy Coordinator Ruby Obando. Good morning and welcome.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning, Ruby. Begin by talking to us about CITO. I believe that a majority of us Belizeans are not quite familiar with this office and the work that it does. Speak to us about the role of the Central Information Technology Office.
Okay, CITO was developed in 1995, I believe, and it was then the government department, just an IT department. And depending on due to the needs of the country, there were other roles that had to be defined. And as such, we have grown from just being a regular IT department to now being like the hub for all the government departments and ministries. The objective was that at the end of the day, we are all able to communicate. If you notice right now, everybody works on their own, everybody is doing what they need to do, but without this, the capability of communicating to one another. Mm-hmm. Now, CITO currently right now is tasked with managing the smart stream. We also provide networking and system services, system administration services. Now, we right now have also, like for example, income tax, we have the Ministry of Environment, and many other departments. But the gist of it is that at the end of the day, we want to be able to connect everybody, mm-hmm. all GOB departments together, and be able to provide better services to the general public.
Now, one of the areas I think that we have heard, before we move into issues of security, that we have been hearing about, and we know CITO works to be able to move us towards, is e-governance.
Yes.
Making government systems more accessible from any part of the world, but also secure, yes, as well. Let's talk about where we are in that process.
Okay. Currently, we are also ISO 27001, mm-hmm. which is Information Security Management System. Basically, it's just ensuring that our data, our government's data, is protected. Mm-hmm. Also, in addition to that, we have external auditors, for example, that audit CITO to ensure mm-hmm. that we comply to these standards. These standards are international standards. Now, this too, I'm sure that we all are aware that government information are leaked. And some of the measures that CITO has taken upon ourselves is to ensure that only if the department sees it fit for you to have these sort of accesses to USB, CD drives, or be able to even copy the data or view the data, then only then do you have access to them. Mm-hmm. So cybersecurity or security in all aspects, there is always a risk associated with them. One of the key essence is to ensure that your end users know what is at stake and what are the highest or the best ways to see those data secure. Yeah. And we know that despite we may have the best security in place, the utmost security is within yourself. Mm-hmm. Because, I'm sorry.
Now we don't have an Eric Snowden or a Julian Assange in Belize, for instance, right? How do you guys deal with or mitigate the threat of government systems being hacked or pried upon?
Well, also with regards to the information security, what we do is we have internal and external scans that we perform. And the guys work 24/7 to ensure that that's the case. I'm not saying, like I said once more, it's highly impossible to have 100% secure network, right? Mm-hmm. But that doesn't mean that you cannot keep up with the latest trends and look out, have monitoring systems in place that will allow you to be able to mitigate these mm-hmm. Issues from happening. Every day, technology changes, and there are people who are in that line of work to probe your network, to probe your systems, and see how they can capitalize on that. That's normal. And like I said, CITO has a very big task at hand, but we are trying and doing our best. And the only way we can keep this standard is by ensuring that we are up to the current trends that exist.
Now let's talk the general topic of cybersecurity. In other parts of the world, people are very protective of their data and their technology tools. We often think in Belize that we don't have to worry as much. We're very lax. I log on to computers and people's emails are open and information is available right there. And I think that we don't realize the amount of threats that exist every single day, not just from those around us, but everywhere in the world. Let's talk about the general concept of cybersecurity and things that Belizeans need to be aware of, but also some of the areas when it comes to infringements on laws that are currently in place.
Okay, I guess we as Belizeans have a tendency of being laxed about it, you know, relaxed, very much at ease with what we do. Like we're tolerant in all aspects. But one of the things that we tend to just ignore is that once you put any type of information on a USB, on a disk, or on your machine or your email, wherever it's possible, that already exists on the web. And despite that you may delete it, there is still a blueprint somewhere. And as convenient as it may be, it is still very highly considered to be very risky for even you and me. It might be not of much value for you because it's something normal for you. But people are looking how to make money out of these things. And that is why these technologies exist, because they live on your data. They live on your blueprint and what is it that you need to know. So we have to be aware that in order for us to protect ourselves, the idea is not to be paranoid, but just to take into consideration that your profile, your whatever you do, there is always a possibility that it may have a negative effect.
Yeah. Now, a part of that is that people think, well, I have nothing to steal. You know, what if my bank accounts are low, you know, my email doesn't have anything serious or any security threat. So they feel almost that nobody would want their information. Is that the case?
No. Everybody wants your information. Like I said, like how the traditional saying goes, one man's garbage, another man's treasure, right? So that means that if I have no use for your own data, somebody else does. There is always somebody that does. Yeah. So there are sensitive information, there is sensitive videos, there is sensitive everything. But to you, it might be something normal.
Yeah.
So that's something that we need to bear in mind. Yeah. Protect yourself at all times. You never know who's your friend and much less who's your enemy.
The same way in which some of these huge advertising companies are able to track your movements online to be able to tailor an ad specifically to you is the same way people might be able to cull information coming from either your email source or your credit card information and that sort of stuff to be used against you, correct?
Yes. If you notice when you log into Chrome or if you have a Gmail account, it will sync automatically once you log in to everything that you are normally used to viewing and searching. How does he know that? Those are things that you need to look out for. And we as end users, I know that you take it, it's just something very innocent.
And it makes life easier for me because it's all there.
Or some people just think it's miraculous, like the computer is a
genius. And it is to a certain extent, but it all depends on what you lead it to and to know about you. And like I said, once it's there and it's once it's saved, there is nothing that you can do. You can delete it and everything.
You can empty your trash box, your recycled bin,
and I can always regain it back. Yes.
That's a great skill to have, Ruby. Now I want to put this in context of something that we've been seeing that is very concerning, and that is the pornography that we have seen circulating of underage persons, of unauthorized photos. Now, internet crimes is something I know that is very challenging to be able to address.
Precisely.
Because where you may demand that X person remove a video from a public space, there's no telling who else has it or where else it can be. Let's talk about from CITO's perspective what needs to be done and what can be done so that those who are doing the original posting of these videos and photos and those who are sharing can know where they're making. Obviously, it's a threat to a person's right to privacy, first of all. But talk about it from your perspective.
Well, currently at the moment, we all know that there are no laws within Belize that would protect us as such, right? The only mandate that we have, well, not the only mandate, sorry, but some of the mandates that we have right now are to pass the cybersecurity law. We also have the options of passing the Data Protection Act. So with regards to IT and how we can protect ourselves and what we recommend end users to do is to ensure that whatever you do, you are able to carry it, to just make sure that it's not something compromising. I know that there is nothing much that you can do once you're captured. But part of the regulations that we intend to uphold is that we don't want you to feel that you are alone, because like I told you, we are on the process of getting these laws implemented. Belize is way back when it comes to laws and regulations to protect us from these things. And another thing too is that right now as it is, we tend to do, if we do put videos and anything compromising, just remember the same thing can happen to you. And in addition to that, we may not have laws right now or IT ways to be able to convict you of such felony, but at the end of the day, there are other means.
There are other laws that it can fall under.
Yes, that can be used to be able to control that.
So let's say, for example, an unauthorized photo of me is posted somewhere.
Right.
And while we don't have the cybersecurity laws to be able to address it from that perspective, I may be able to talk about defamation or perhaps it's stolen property if it was retrieved from my phone, something along those lines. My question is, and I'm not very clear as to what other laws, but I know it can be done. My question to you is, do you have the capacity to track where it would come from? If there has to be some sort of investigation that takes place, maybe it's within the government ministry, and you can track where it was downloaded, where it was screenshot, where it was first sent.
If you notice right now with the current phones that we have, there is this geotagging that they have, right? Now, it is possible, but it's not as easy to prove because it depends on the current network infrastructure that Belize has. One, it has a lot to do with the telecommunications aspect of it too, because we are interconnected to them. But like I said, we do have the capacity. Right? And it might be as, we might not have enough professionals as is, but that is the reason why we have relations with other countries. As we all know right now, with any given circumstances, even for any disease, we tend to communicate to other countries and be able to get the aid. So there's only one way going about this, it's by growing. And despite that we might not be able to prove it like instantly, there is still a way and a possibility that every person that commits a crime, you can eventually be caught.
Now, when you look at the fact that if we take this example, for instance, where you have the dissemination of video footage of underage girls involved in sexual activity, if you look at it from the perspective of the victim, I use the word victim because these are individuals who never authorized one being taped to the spreading of the information, the footage. When you put yourself in the perspective of the victim, I would want to think that they would feel lost in a sense that there is no one or nowhere to turn to in the absence of laws that would be able to protect them from this kind of illegal cyber activity.
There is, well, like I said, we don't have the laws in black and white right now within our country, but there are other ways. Based on what I've come to know is that we are part of a cyber community. So despite that we might not have these laws in place, the cyber community, or even, for example, the police department, is able to pursue these cases.
Yeah.
It might not be with the same intent, like, for example, okay, I've caught you with these videos, you downloaded these. But remember, each one of these are different technicalities, different type of crimes. So the level of that may depend on what can be persecuted upon. But that doesn't mean that we cannot use or given laws that we have. For example, if they were underage, for example, we have the Child Protection Act. That can be used. It might not be in line with technology, but it can also be done through other laws. So not forgetting too that with the cyber community that we have, we always have that option to be able to know what it is that we need to prepare ourselves for. It's never nice to be on the other side of the fence where you are the victim. It never is. But the same way we have technology to aid us or aid them to do malice on you, there is always another way to get across and getting you into prison.
Ruby, to be clear, let's continue with the example. And you say victim, and I will go even further and say, if these girls, and we suspect, are not of the age of consent, it's rape, period. Can they tap into the resources of CITO to be able to trace and track and find out sources of these types of photos and videos? Do we have the capacity, and do you have the authority to be able to assist the police department?
If we are requested, we have to comply.
And you can track through your outside resources or internally?
It would have to be both. It would have to be a combination of. We cannot do it only by using the outside or the inside. It has to be a collective effort.
Let me ask a follow-up question, piggybacking on what Marlene has mentioned, as well as the scenario that I brought up earlier. What would be the difference in a method of approach to social media, Facebook, Instagram, or what have you, and what we would consider, in a sense, personal communication through WhatsApp? So you have maybe a picture or footage floating around in the cyberspace we know to be social media, versus if I am in possession of images and I pass it on to Marlene via WhatsApp and it propagates in that manner. What would be the difference in terms of how that is treated?
Remember, social sites are there for you to socialize, right? But at the same time, due to our limitation when it comes to laws, we are not able to force them to give us anything, right? But like I said, if we take that approach and versus WhatsApp, the blueprint is still there. The blueprint will never be removed. And one of the things we need to learn is that this phone, for example, has an address, has a MAC address, like we call it. And this has a physical address. Now, if you snap an image, and just remember that you have a blueprint, right? If you use geotagging, for example, that can also narrow you down to where it was taken, right? So every little thing that we have that is electronic has a markup, has some signature to it. So
things can be traced back to devices.
Yes, especially.
And devices are registered
Yes.
in this country.
Well, hopefully all of them.
Yeah, well, if you are to get a new SIM now, you do have to register. So we're getting there, I think.
That's the purpose. I mean, we need to keep going. We cannot stay still. Like I mentioned earlier, technology changes so quickly. So just the gist of it all too, it could be that people just need to learn that it is possible to track, and we all make mistakes. And a criminal may be a criminal, but then at the end of the day, there is always one simple mistake that you thought that you didn't had it covered, but you don't.
All right, because we are so frustrated, exhausted, and sickened by the amount of times we see these videos and photos going around.
Yeah.
I want you to talk to the perpetrator and tell them. I mean, it is important. I think people do these things. Maybe they do understand what they're doing, but they don't know that they can be found, they can be tracked, and depending on who's involved, can be persecuted. So let's remind people once again about their blueprint, and then also we'll give some advice to general users about how to protect your own privacy.
Right. One of the key things to all of us, because sometimes we might not have had that intention to put you in this position, and sometimes we thought it was innocently done, right? And we all were at the episode where we either have a good intentions or bad intentions. Like I said, once you do that, don't forget that there is always a way to be caught. And us as citizens have to be aware that your data may not mean that much worth to somebody else, to you or someone else. But there is always somebody looking to do bad to you. So, by all means, if you intend on doing something wrong to somebody else, just imagine that it can also happen to you in a higher degree, and you can also be caught, because no crime is perfect.
Yeah.
And with cybersecurity, like I said, or with the internet, social media, why do you think it's open? Why do you think there's a freedom for you to upload anything you like?
Because people want the data.
They want your data. They are feeding you what is that they want you to let go. If you notice, some persons are taking a tea. I'm sipping my coffee.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm here at home.
Yeah.
But really and truly, just bear in mind, I can be good and I can be bad.
Yeah.
And you can always be caught. There's not such thing as a perfect crime.
What we notice is that oftentimes you find a couple, a man and his woman, and when things are great, they take certain pictures, or they engage in a sex tape, for instance, for their own private use, what have you. And when things go sour, there's a leak. And then what was consensual now becomes an issue of open embarrassment to the other person.
Yes.
Especially when, for instance, the guy leaks the footage to expose or embarrass his ex-girlfriend, for instance. And you find that it oftentimes happens, but when you look at the recourse, I guess people get the feeling that they're stuck with not being able to bring certain charges against the individual because this was done during a period where they were both in love and they were both okay with the idea of filming themselves.
Yes, but that's besides the point. The idea is, at the end of the day, that's your.
Yeah.
That's you.
The act of sharing.
The act of sharing.
is
You.
different.
It's me. It's talking about what happens today, what happens tomorrow. At the end of the day, what you do with that product is what defines the true intent. You notice that when we are angry or when we are frustrated, we don't tend to think logically. So our first reaction is just to publish. And that's where you make mistakes too. So the idea that the persons have that they can just, I'm just gonna revenge.
There are consequences.
There are high consequences that come about due to that.
Well, I am so grateful that you joined us this morning. Is there a timeline for when the cybersecurity laws should be
implemented? We are we just started that, so we have to be able to.
So you're in the drafting phase.
Yes.
Okay.
And we're working. We're supposed to work in conjunction with Solgen, Solicitor General's office, and every needed stakeholder to make it a holistic, and ensure that we can somehow guarantee us citizens that we have a chance at defending ourselves.
Well, we appreciate you being here to be able to share share your information as to what CITO is doing, and most importantly, reminding people that the internet is public, and ultimately what you put out is recorded and mapped as a part of your own profile.
Yes, it is.
And if you're not careful, retrievable by just about anyone, right? So
Yes.
thank you once again.
Sure, thank you too.
We're going to go ahead and take a break, and when we come back, we'll have our wrap up, so stay tuned.